Okay, for this next part, I will need my bird ocarina design paper. If I were a better student, I would have this picture finished in the back, but I didn't. But I can just go off this one because I have a pretty clear idea of what I want to do. So I'm going to put that right next to me so I can look at it while I'm working. I have another little chunk of clay right here. I'm going to turn this into a pinch pot, and this is going to be the bird's head. Now, something really important that I haven't really talked to you guys about yet is we cannot have air pockets in our clay. So if, for example, here I'll just kind of have my example here, if this was like an air pocket, and now I cover this all up with clay, so now there's air trapped inside my clay here. What happens when the clay is all dry and it goes into the kiln and it gets fired is that air trapped inside of there has nowhere to go. And clay, when it's getting fired, likes to shrink. So it gets smaller, but air, when it gets really, really hot, it expands. So there's two forces working against each other. Well, the air is going to win, and so the air is going to find a way to escape, which means the clay is going to break open and explode in the kiln. And you definitely don't want that to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and close this up again and make it like a little ball, and now I'm going to make this a tiny little pinch pot that is going to be the head of the bird. All right, and I'm looking at my reference picture to see if I can make it look kind of like the bird that I chose, which was our tufted titmouse. So now making a little head, and so when I'm attaching it here, because I think that would be probably a good place, I'm going to go ahead and cut a hole right here, which also is going to take some of the weight away, which is always nice. With ceramics, you don't want it to be super heavy, so I'm going to take some clay away, so I don't need all that clay right there. So now you can see there's a hole right there, because that's going to be where my bird is going to, head is going to be attached, and that will also help me have a good place for that air to escape. So I'm going to go ahead and continue working on it. I'm noticing the clay is a little bit dry, so it's starting to crack, and I'm just going to smooth that over. All right, if you want your bird to look cute, you just make the head disproportionately big, because I don't know if you guys know this, but when we are babies, our heads are very close to the size that they will be, when we grow up. So lots of our body parts grow, but our heads really don't. That's why babies have such crazy big heads. And so anything you make with a giant head then looks extra cute. All right, mine actually is not that giant, but this seems like a good, size for my bird head. So I'm going to go ahead. It doesn't really need to be scored because this clay really doesn't require scoring, but I'm just going to be safe, and I'm going to do a little bit of scoring here, and I'm going to add a little bit of water there too, just so this will fit together nicely. And I'm doing the same thing here. I'm going to put some water on this edge. I'm just scoring it a little tiny bit, just to rough up that clay a little bit so it has a good surface to stick to. All right, so now I'm kind of pushing that together, and now again I will knit those two parts together, and I can always do the same thing with that little worm and add that worm if I want it to be a little bit more of a smoother transition. All right, and now you can start adding details. What I like to do with the beak, oops, I have to do this kind of fast. With this one, actually, I'll make the beak separate, and then I'll attach the beak. And the same thing with the eyes. I'll create eyes to go with this. But this kind of gives you a pretty good idea of how to go ahead and build that head. And now we can add lots of other details too. So now I can grab like some clay, and I can look at my reference image and kind of look at what that beak looks like. Ooh, I think I added too much water. Let me grab another piece. Okay, and I'm looking at the shape. And this is pretty good. And then I can always add details later. Like there's little lines on there and stuff, and I can just add that later. And you just have to be careful, especially with the beak, that you don't make the end too fragile. I'll attach this. Okay, that's a little bit too giant. Let's cut that down a little bit. All right. Sometimes it helps. For this, I might even use my popsicle stick to kind of blend that together, because it's good to have some tools to help you along. All right. And if it's too big, I can always cut it down a little bit, and then I can change the shape of it. I think it's kind of awfully giant for this bird, so now I can kind of just take a little bit off and kind of make that shape work for me. All right, change it around a little bit. Okay, that's looking better. Okay, and then this one has a little crest on top of its head. Kind of like the crest. I don't want to make it too fragile, so I'll keep it pretty sturdy. There's its little crest, so I'll attach that to its head. Oops, I guess you guys should see that. So I'm attaching a crest to its head. If I want to do the eyes, these eyes are very circular, so I could just take like a little piece of clay like this and flatten it out completely, and then just stick it right there. But I could also, I don't think I like that as much, I can also use a needle tool, and you guys have like your skewer, and I could just kind of draw where the eye is going to go. I think I might like that better. I'll draw this in, I'll draw the outline too, and then I can even use my skewer to later kind of like cut into this a little bit so it has a little bit more dimension to it. But I'll wait until the clay is a little bit drier before I do that. So I might wait until the clay is a little bit leather hard. And then of course I can also add lots of details, so then it starts to look more like a bird when I, add little details to it right there. Then of course you want to make sure you do it even on both sides, so then this side will also get an eye, and on from there. And then I can, for the wings, I can either like draw in where the wings are going to go, something like that, and then I can carve, because I really like carving with clay, so I probably would do that, and then I'll carve like the clay away to give it dimension. And it's very wet right now, so ideally I would do this when it's leather hard. I like this better, but some of you really like adding clay, so then you could, like make it the shape of wings and then, like add clay to it. That's totally okay too. The other thing I think is really fun is to add feet to the bottom. So you might want to, draw the bird's feet on here, which I think is super fun, but that's just me. You don't have to do any of that kind of thing like that, because it has anyway, something like that. But that part, those details are all up to you. Look at your design for it, and then one thing to just remember that's super, super important, have places for that air to escape. All right, enjoy, have fun with this project.